Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of Quantum Theory, one of the founding members of Eight-Sided Films. And tonight on the Eight-Sided blog, I'm going to follow up on a conversation I was having at my day job where I do fundraising just a day or two ago about bigotry and racism in particular, but also sexism and ableism and ageism and all the other ways that we are systemically discriminating against people and also taking advantage of their existence to sort of pull the risk out of our own lives and dump it on someone else. At the end of the day, that's what power does, is it makes you feel safer by allowing you to take some of your problems and just write them off on other people so that other people have to solve their problems and your problems at the same time. That's what the institutionalization of bigotry accomplishes. It makes some people safer at the expense of others. Economically, that's what slavery is. It's somebody else having to do your work for you. That's it. That's the whole idea. And this person that I was talking to asked me how I thought entertainment, he asked me how I was solving these problems and what I was doing, which is a fair question. And so anybody who's been watching the developmental breakdown knows that I have a thesis that I've been working on regarding what culture is and what culture does. Okay, culture is the group of experiences that we choose to have in common. And the experiences that we share in common give us a basis for expecting things from one another. They give us a basis for communication. If we have certain experiences in common, I know I can use certain words, certain vocabulary, share certain ideas, and I know you're going to pick them up right away. I can also make certain determinations about the kinds of observations you're going to make about the world based on the experiences we have in common. So all of our communication is grounded in what we know about one another and what we have in common with each other. And culture is the group of experiences we get to choose to have in common with other people. Okay, so content creators are in charge of giving people experiences to have in common. And as such, part of our responsibility is making sure that the experiences that we're giving people are worthy of sharing, worthy of having in common and sharing as a culture. Okay? So that's what culture is. One of the things that we have lost track of as cultural leaders is the sense of specificity with which we present stories or news or anything else. And this is a consequence, in my opinion, just of publicly traded companies owning the media. But when you're a publicly traded company, your job is to create less risk, more revenue with less risk than you did last year, so that the people who looked at your company last year and said, "Oh, that stock is a little too scary for me," can look at it this year and go, "Okay, I can buy that stock." And then next year you got to reach the people who couldn't do it this year, and that's how you sell more and more stock each year. That's how your company gets bigger if you're publicly traded. That's your job, okay? So as part of that process, running the media, naturally these corporations do a lot of focus group work. They mine the audience for any and all data that they can get on them regarding what more audience members are willing to accept today that they maybe wouldn't have accepted before. Because if you could make the audience wider and wider, that's one way you can make the risk less and less. And that's not news to anybody. That's what advertising people do. That's the whole thing, right? That's wide appeal is not a phrase that surprises anyone anymore. Broader appeal is what everybody's looking for. The problem is that the focus gets put on what are more people willing to accept and not what experience should more people be having in common. What experience should more people be sharing with one another, even if it's a little bit challenging for them, even if it's a little bit outside their comfort zone. Because then having that experience in common with other people challenges them to step up their vocabulary, step up their understanding of the world around, their ability to observe. And as we try and make our content as easily digestible as possible to as many people as possible, the thing that we lose is specificity. We rely more and more on archetypes and stereotypes to tell our stories. And in doing so, we end up leaning on the audience's understanding of who somebody is already when they walk in the room. We end up leaning more and more on preconceived notions that the audience is walking in to the theater with, because those preconceived notions basically determine how much of what we're doing they are willing to accept. So we end up playing to those preconceived notions more and more aggressively. We bleed the specificity out of our stories. We bleed the specificity out of our characters. And in doing so, we end up reinforcing, by showing them their preconceived notions right back to them, we end up showing them that the world is exactly the way they were taught that it was. And when we're all taught that certain people, even on a subconscious level, we're taught certain people are lower than us, and we're taught that certain people are greater than us, then that ends up being perpetuated by the media when we rely on the preconceived notions that people have to communicate with them. Our job is to give them something better to have in common. So what tool do we use to break that stereotype, break that archetype? Well, we use specificity. The more specific a story gets, the more real the details get, the more absorbing the details get even. The more you're absorbed into all the little facets of the people that you're watching on a screen, whether those are real people in a news broadcast or whether those are people that we made up in a movie or a television show, the more absorbing those characters are in terms of the details that are put out, the more we're encouraged to look deeper into their lives and deeper into the people that are being presented to us and understand their motivations and understand their reasons for, not just their reasons for doing what they're doing, but also all the circumstances around what they're doing. You know, all the details of their life become the food for the audience. And subjecting the audience to that level of specificity, that higher level of specificity, becomes one aspect of the experience that all these people are having in common. We teach people to dig deeper into one another by putting them in a room and inviting them to dig deeper into this person over here. And in teaching them that, we start eradicating the stereotypes and the archetypes. We start eradicating all of the subconscious ideas that we have about one another based on race, based on religion, based on gender, based on sexual preference or gender identity, based on our age, based on our level of ability, based, on what kind of education we have, based on all of the demographic data that we've been taught to see one another through. And instead we look at, what is this person doing right now and how are they doing it? And how did they come to be doing things in this manner? They see each other as more specific. Now, the other thing that I ended up talking about with my coworker is that this element of deinstitutionalizing bigotry is just one element of deinstitutionalizing bigotry. There's no way that I can solve the whole problem. And there's no way that all of Hollywood can solve the whole problem. But we can handle, I described it as a wire basket. All of the wires reinforce one another. So if we pull one of those wires out of the bigotry, pull one of them out, basket's weaker. We pull the laws that protect bigots and protect the disproportionate enforcement of civil rights out of the basket. We pull more wires out of the basket. The basket starts to get weaker. It's got bigger holes in it, and we just keep pulling. We teach kids in school about the holistic history of our country, as opposed to just one perspective. We get kids to look at history from multiple angles and multiple perspectives, and to understand that a person can simultaneously achieve something great and admirable and also perform an act of atrocity. Both of those things are possible in the same space. And someone's historical perspective on those events is going to change depending on who they're looking at, whose eyes they're looking through. And it's okay to admire some aspects of something someone did and completely condemn some of the other, aspects of something someone did. And to look more completely at one another as people. Because we're all fucked. And yet, we're all capable of great things. We're all capable of horrible things too, I think, and that's the cool thing about the human condition, is that we have this toolbox, and there's all kinds of things in the toolbox, and how you choose to pull those tools out determines how history is going to remember you as a person. I think teaching kids that in history class pulls a couple wires out of the basket. There's all these things we can do together. So I don't pretend to have a complete solution to the problem, certainly not, but I think that creating content that gets us all sitting down looking at each other in a more specific way, and that teaches us as a community that we owe it to ourselves and we can expect one another to engage the details in other people's lives and engage all the tiny little pieces of information all at once that make us all people, as opposed to just, putting a label on somebody and washing our hands of any further work that needs to be done in terms of understanding that person. I think that creating that expectation comes from giving people experiences in common that reinforce that way of thinking. I think that's the best thing I can do. I think that that's the most help I can be. I think I can be other helps along the way. I think I can help people in my community that are, dealing with oppression in the moment. I can step in and make myself useful. I'm happy to do those things, and I think that that's of service too. And I think we all need to build those skills and those habits. But in terms of protecting one another's civil rights, and in terms of protecting one another's right to be a person in this space and in this day, I think that my biggest contribution and my most expansive contribution is in providing stories and performances that coach people and teach people to look past any preconceived notions we may have about other people, and to embrace specificity and the actions that people take, and the specific manner in which they undertake those actions, as a better guideline for the judgment of other people and the forgiveness of other people. I think that's how I'm doing this. And it just seemed like a blog topic. I was talking to my friend at work. It seemed like something to get into. And and so I am very conscious of the social impact that Hollywood has. I'm very conscious of the responsibility that we share as content creators to build a culture that not just reflects us well, but that provides us with the best possible opportunity of a better society in the future. That's my thinking. That's what I've got. I am going to remind everybody who's watching that we just finished Declassified Season 1. Declassified is a web show about the Bureau of Applied Defense Development and all the horrible, strange, interesting projects they undertook in the 70s and 80s and 60s during the Cold War, during the space race. And the first season is the story of Project Icarus, which was an attempt. It's all archival footage, so it's not like big special effects, but it's actors. It's actors doing acting. That's what it is. But the first season is the story of Captain Whit Pierce, who was launched at Saturn's moon of Titan using Apollo-era technology in 1977. 8 years by himself in a space capsule, hurtling towards Saturn, and all the things that go wrong, and knowing full well that we can't get him back once he gets there. how is this person going to survive? How is this person going to keep themselves healthy? How are they going to keep their spacecraft in working order when things start to go wrong? And he doesn't do a complete job of it, but he does a job of it. And it's in the details, it's in the specificity. So please watch. Gerard Marzilli is the actor in the show, and I'm very proud of the work we did. We did a wrap party last weekend. Everybody who saw it was blown away, and that's refreshing and exciting. So I think you will be too. Give it a try. It's right here on youtube.com/8sided films. Just go to the 8sided films main page, and there's a playlist right there for you. It's called Declassified Project Icarus. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Let us know you like it. Give us a subscribe. Click the bell. And I will catch up with you guys next week. Have yourselves a great evening. Take care. Bye-bye.